Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Good Information Systems equals Easier Data Sharing with the American Red Cross. I'm Yadier, and I manage outreach and data quality and standards for NGO AidMap. This is the first webinar in what may become a series of webinars that we're organizing as part of our NGO AidMap initiative. And for those that don't know it, NGO AidMap is an online tool that aims to increase the amount of publicly available data on international development and humanitarian response by providing detailed information on the work of our members. And you could see the NGO AidMap on your screen right now. So over the years, as part of this initiative, we've had many conversations with members about their information management systems, and we've seen how different systems can make it a lot easier or harder for organizations to share information about their work. And we've also heard from members that as they develop or update their own systems, it would be really useful to know more about what other organizations are doing, and that's why we've organized this webinar today. So I'm really pleased that Jonathan Garro, an information analyst with the American Red Cross's International Services, has agreed to do this webinar with us today. Jonathan will be talking to us about the evolution of the International Services Information Management Strategy and their new database, Efficient Collaborative Operating System, or ECHOS, I believe it's pronounced, as well as a new mapping system that integrates with ECHOS. So for our webinar today, Jonathan will basically present for about 25 minutes, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Just so you know how you can interact with us on the webinar today, basically you're on mute and you'll remain on mute for the duration of the webinar, but if you have a question, please type it into the question box and I'll pose it on your behalf. Like I said, we'll take Q&A after Jonathan has had a chance to go through his presentations, but if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type it into the box right away. So Jonathan, I am going to turn it over to you to be the presenter.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Jonathan Garrow. I am an information analyst with the Red Cross's International Services Department. I started about a year ago, and when I got here, we were sort of in a transitional phase as far as the way that we were dealing with all of our data. At the time, it was sort of immediately apparent to me, somebody that was new, that this enormous department had sort of become very siloed with the way that it was dealing with information. So I think a lot of people sort of on the surface are aware of what the Red Cross does with regard to disasters and disaster response, but there's sort of this whole other side to the ISC that really deals with a lot of very different things around the world. So in addition to disaster response, we're also doing development work, we're doing international humanitarian law work. We have a division here called Restoring Family Links, which helps families from around the world get back in touch with people that have, family members that have been separated by war or migration or any other number of reasons. So every day we were really generating just tons and tons of data, and it was getting, I think, increasingly difficult to collect and manage and analyze all of that information. So a few years back, the department had taken it upon itself to really try to modernize the way that it was coping with all of this data and try to come up with one single solution that was going to fit as many different needs as possible. And your pronunciation was almost perfect. I think in-house what we're referring to it as is ECOS, so sort of a hard E. So ECOS is the Efficient Collaborative Operating System, and it was born out of this need to really centralize everything, to add some transparency to all of our data, to make it easier to collaborate, to share information, but also share ideas, and make, once you take that step past evaluation, to sort of move beyond that and use those lessons learned in future projects. So getting everything under one roof, so to speak, was sort of an immense challenge, because it meant taking all these diverse projects and making them fit into this one box. So for that reason, it was difficult to really find a platform that was going to allow us to do that, to streamline everything under one piece of software. So what you're looking at right now, and you should be able to see my screen, I hope I will be alerted if you cannot see it, is what ECOS is built upon. That is Salesforce. Now Salesforce, as the name would imply, isn't really what you would expect us to use. It's, as the name would imply, sort of meant as a customer relationship management software. So something that helps companies, businesses that are doing a lot of sales really connect with their customers to analyze how they're interacting with them to improve sales and whatnot. But the platform itself is really just a very flexible database that you can customize to suit almost any need that you want. So our project lead and her team, when it came time to make a decision about how we were going to store all this information, they went with Salesforce just because we were able to customize it. We were able to make it, sort of shape it to fit our needs. So that said, basically what Salesforce is a database that all of our programs, be it internal, things that we're tracking internally, or work that we're doing around the world, all of those things get recorded as records. And what you're looking at right now is an example that I put together just for this talk. So this is, for all intents and purposes, for this talk, just a project that we're doing somewhere. And across the top, you'll see this is really all of the information that record is meant to store. So there's a lot of location data, and for the purposes of this talk, since we're talking about the NGO aid map, I'll focus mostly on what we're doing with locations. One small caveat is that my colleague Dale, who's the person that actually developed the Mapfolio, which we'll get to in a second, is not here today, so I'm going to have to fill in. Most of my knowledge is about ECOS, what you're looking at right now. When we get to the Mapfolio, I'll have to sort of reiterate several times that this is not necessarily my domain of expertise. So I'll try to make that clear, but I'll also try to sort of share as much knowledge about that platform as I can. So what you're looking at is this record, and this is storing all of the information related to this project, this interaction example project that we're doing. So some basic information is saved right at the top, and this is called an object. So this object, for instance, is the program project detail. So you're going to see the project name, the business unit. In this case, IRP refers to the International Response Program, so that's the work that we're doing abroad to do international development, but we can change that to be whatever we want. And for those of you that are potentially familiar with the PMD Pro methodology of designing and implementing an international development project, you'll be familiar with the 6 phases of that. So what you're seeing here is 3, 4, 5, meaning that this particular project is being implemented currently, and you see right below that it explains it with the phase name, the planning, implementation, and monitoring. So there's a lot of information that this record is going to store, so information about beneficiaries, and anybody that's familiar with the NGO aid map can see that there are some parallels here to what we're recording internally versus what we're going to be reporting with NGO aid map and things like that. So target beneficiaries is one of those fields, budget information, the person that's responsible, some start and end date information, and then most importantly the locations, which I will focus on. So the program and project location for this particular project is saved right here as Port-au-Prince and Jacmel. Jacmel, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a location in Haiti, and Port-au-Prince, of course, being the capital. So what this does is this is saying, I've gone ahead and tagged this project as these 2 locations, that the activities for this project are occurring in one of those 2 places, right? Those are 2 disparate locations that everything I'm saying is happening there. So if I wanted to add another location, I can walk you through sort of, this is the WebViz platform that we've built. And what this is going to allow us to do is type in another name, say also in Haiti, so I'll just add the North Department. And when I search for that, what it's doing is it's going to search a couple different geodatabases for this location. And as soon as it loads, you'll see these are all the places around the world that have this query that I typed in some hits for. So the one I'm looking for is Nord Haiti. Nord is the department level, so that's admin level 1, you can see right there. So when I click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to give me a rough outline of the location in question. So for this, if you can zoom out a little bit, we'll see this is just up in the north of Haiti. And it's gone ahead and created an outline. And then when I scroll down, it gets a little bit more information. So the centroid, the admin name, the code, the country, etc. So once I choose this location, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me back to that record, and it's going to show that this record has been tagged with an additional location. And what that does is it makes it extremely useful for some other things that we do with this record, particularly when it comes to the Mapfolio, which I'll get to in a second. You'll see these 3 locations are very, very useful because now it's showing anybody that looks at this record exactly where all this work is taking place. And then to sort of take a step back, when you have all this location information and you're building a project, in this case, which the example that we're using is all of this stuff is happening in Haiti. For those of you who are in the international development world, you're probably familiar with log frames, and log frames, for those of you who aren't familiar, is really just a way to organize all of the activities regarding a project into specific measurable activities, right? So when we take a look at this one, I have created a very, very simple log frame, and everything gets divided into levels. So this is a goal, and the goal is obviously just sort of the very broad intention of your project. And then it gets as specific as you want. I've only gone down one additional level to the objective, and I said my goal is to improve mapping, and then my objective is slightly more specific, and it says better data collection. And then right here is my actual indicator. So this is the thing that I'm actually going to try to measure, right? So this is a very straightforward number. I'm just saying I want to know the number of people that I've trained in the field to do GIS work. Now, what you're looking at here, this is the log frame is a very customized element within Salesforce. This was something that is really an example of the way that we needed to take Salesforce and really mold it to shape our needs. So we're used to building what you're looking at right now in Excel, and that was a very difficult thing to try to reflect in a cloud-based platform like Salesforce. So this took some time, and once we were able to get all of the pieces of information that we're used to having at our fingertips reflected in the system, we were able to take advantage of this Mapfolio, this location-based database that we're using. So when you look at this, this is some information that this indicator reflects, right? This is a numeric indicator, meaning that it's something that I'm actually counting. It's the number of people that I've trained in GIS. The period aggregate, for those of you who are sort of more in the weeds on data collection and things like that, this is just saying since it's a sum, it means I'm working in multiple locations and I'm not worried about double counting somebody. If I was worried about double counting somebody, I would just take the max, meaning if I count twice, I would just take the larger of the 2 numbers because that would eliminate the possibility that somebody that we are working with is being counted twice. Collection frequency, just asking the number of times per year that I'm actually collecting this data, the number of times I'm going out and trying to get a count of the number of people that I've trained in GIS. And some more information, and then once I hit save, it's going to update my log frame. And that sort of begs the question, now that I have all of this, where does the location come in? We previously had all of the locations saved directly on this log frame element, but what we've done recently is change that, and this is the indicator tracking table. So this is where, now that, let's say I'm at the end of my quarter, I have the number of people that I've trained in GIS counted, and I'm ready to report it into the system. What you'll see is a very familiar icon right here, this map pen. And so right now I'm looking at, if you can see my cursor, FY15, which was the fiscal year that we're currently in for the Red Cross. And then the number of months, so this is month 4 of Q2 essentially that we're in. So I have to do a little math in my head. So once I'm ready to say, you know, I've trained 25 GIS workers, what it's going to ask me is, well, where, right? So I already went ahead and added those 2 locations. I added Port-au-Prince and Jacmel, but maybe I trained, say, 10 in Port-au-Prince, and then I trained the other 15 in Jacmel. So that allows me to disaggregate my counts specifically by location, and that's incredibly important when we're collecting all of this data to be able to see and share where it is that we're working, right? All of the impact of our work can be traced directly to a very specific location. So obviously that's incredibly helpful, collecting all of this data, but then sort of the bigger question is, now that we have that information, what can we do with it? Well, when we look at our record page again, that information has been saved. It's just not necessarily totally apparent, right? It's not easy to see, well, what happened to that 25 count that we just put in. So now if we go over to the Mapfolio, this is a chance for us to actually see what that looks like. Now, for a small caveat, as I said I would be giving everybody, is that since Dale, my colleague, is not here who designed the system, I might not be able to give you quite as complete of an explanation about the process that went into developing this and then the way it connects, but I can sort of explain to you how I use it as more of a consumer than a developer of this. This is all of our projects that are currently in ECO. So we had to go through a process of migrating all of this information that we had sort of offline, and as I said, in sort of a siloed system, or mini siloed systems around the department, where everybody was sort of storing things in their own databases, or maybe in their a shared drive within their own team. And we needed to centralize it all in one place. So this Mapfolio allows us to visualize all of that based on the information that we record in ECOS. So this, as you can see, when you sort of hover over, divides the world up into the regions the way that we, for the Red Cross, do divide the regions. So you see there, it's Asia, the Middle East, and Europe is all, and North Africa is all one region. Then we have Sub-Saharan Africa as another. And then we have the Latin America, Caribbean region. And if we were to select one, we can see sort of the ways that we can interact with the Mapfolio. You see right there, I clicked on the Latin America region, and this thing slides out right here that allows us to get a better sense of what it is that's going on in this region, right? So for one thing, you can see this pie chart that is a little bit interactive, where you can see the sectors that we have tagged a bunch of different projects in, right? So if I wanted to only see the projects in Latin America that are tagged as health, I can click on that, and what it does is it actually specifies all of the projects here that are health related. So if I click on this PrevCita program, what it will do is it will give me some of the basic information based on, again, this record page. If we were to look at the PrevCita program, this is what we would be seeing. Some start and end dates, the status, etc. And if I wanted to get a direct link to that, I can click right there on the View in ECOS button, and that'll bring me directly to this PrevCita program. So just being able to visualize is really great, but then there's also a few different levels of analysis that we can do from this Mapfolio. Now, if I hide this, I can come over here, and we have access to a few different layers of information that we can add. So if I wanted to see any of these contextual layers, and again, these are all getting pulled from other databases. So if I wanted to see my projects versus the temperature, when I click on that, you'll see it pulls up in real time the temperature that's going on currently around the world. So if I were to zoom in a little bit, you can see some of these numbers change, right? It's still currently at the regional level. It's saying we have 71 active projects right now. But as I zoom in further, you'll see eventually, there we go, all of the countries that those 71 projects are referring to. So you'll see some in Colombia and Peru, it looks like. When I zoom up here to the Caribbean, you see Haiti makes up a very large portion of our work, 54 projects. And by clicking on that again, I'm able to zoom in even further, and this is only showing me the projects that are occurring in Haiti. There's also a good deal of sharing that we can do based on this. So if I wanted to click on this right here, which you see is the Stories tab, what that does is it helps us sort of bridge that gap between all of this information that we have and the way that we're sharing it externally. So you see right now, because this is a sort of a project that's still getting built out, we have a relatively limited number of stories, but if we click on one, we can zoom in. Right now, obviously a hot topic right now is Ebola. So when we click on the Ebola story, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up places that we've mapped that are specifically that we're working on for Ebola response. And again, if I click on one of these, I can go check out what's going on in Yadier. So if I click on what's happening in ECOS, this brings me to the record page for that. So there is a slight division that gets done sort of in our work and is also consequently reflected in ECOS, which is that we have response and we have recovery. So in this case, this is a response project because it's a disaster, something that's currently going on that we're actively monitoring and engaging with, versus something, say, in Haiti or in the case of this interaction example record, this is something that's a recovery project. So it's two different aspects of our work that, again, is getting housed in one big database. So that's the Mapfolio. Again, this is something that is really exciting. It's something that we're building out currently as we speak. And then what's particularly useful for this is it relates to all of you is this makes our sharing with the NGO aid map really, really simple. So there's two different ways that I, as somebody that works very closely with the NGO aid map, can do with ECOS that makes my job easier in that regard. One is I can run reports. Now Salesforce, being the database software that it is, has a built-in functionality that makes it really easy and really powerful as a reporting tool. So if I were to, actually let's go, yeah, here. So if I go to the reports feature, what this allows me to do is build these queries without the need to really understand, you know, for instance, SQL language or anything like that. I can create filters to suit really whatever needs that I have. So if I have a very specific question, the chances are that based on the information in ECOS, I can develop a report that will answer that question. So as this relates to the NGO aid map, if the NGO aid map is asking for, say, the name of the project, a summary, the location, obviously, the media contact person, the data contact person, etc., that all is currently information that we're already tracking and that we're already keeping in ECOS. It's just a matter every time that I want to update the NGO aid map of building a report that will answer those questions for me and that will formulate a single report that pulls all that information together, and then it's just really a matter of either going into the NGO aid map and making those edits manually, or even preferable is just using that batch upload tool, which means taking that information from ECOS, making it in Excel format, and then very quickly creating a transition for that Excel document that I just created to transition it into that batch upload tool and then uploading it, and it's a very straightforward process. Now, Dale is currently helping me to create an even more automated process, which would involve basically taking a query based on this report and being even more straightforward, really just pushing a button and it automatically sending that data to the NGO aid map. We're not quite there yet. We're going to be working on that this fall, but as I said, really before ECOS, and I, as somebody that started last year, sort of have the perspective of the pre- and post-ECOS world, I know what it was like updating the NGO aid map for an organization like the Red Cross that has, you know, dozens of active projects at any given time. And even really at the time when I first started working with the NGO aid map, it was still limited to a few countries. And so even just Haiti, which is a single country that we work in, it would take sometimes a couple hours, if not more, to update all of that program information. Now, with ECOS, I have one report that I have saved that I push a button and it allows me to pull all that current information and answer these questions extremely quickly and make these updates to the NGO aid map really, really quickly. So that, I think, I just looked at my watch, that is 25 minutes. I think I may have timed that perfectly. So we'll see if anybody has any questions. I would be happy to go into more detail about anything that I covered.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. You did indeed time that perfectly. I'm very impressed. We do have a few questions, so I'm just going to pose them in the order in which I received them. So the first is a question about and they're pouring in, the Mapfolio technology. Is that a commercial off-the-shelf technology, or is it something that the Red Cross developed itself?
Sure. So I will, for the third time, just sort of preface my response by saying that Dale would probably be in the best position to answer a question like that. My understanding is that he is collaborating with outside companies, and he's sort of taking some information that's obviously open source. So a lot of these maps are based on information that you can take for free based on open source geodatabases and things like that. As far as the visualization, the way that it's being presented, that I am pretty sure is something that he is working with another vendor, if not multiple vendors, to help him create that. I know he is somebody that's very talented with coding and all of that, so I know he had some role to play in that. I'm not sure if he was doing this more or less in partnership with somebody, or if it was almost completely another vendor. But as far as the specific technology, I can't say. I know that there are APIs that connect the information from Salesforce to external visualizations like this. The specifics on that is something that I would have to follow up, and I'd be happy to follow up and respond, and you can hopefully disseminate that information to whoever asked that question.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that. Then we also got a couple of questions about the sort of back-end use of this, or how you get people to enter the data into this system. So how does the Red Cross handle that process?
That's a fantastic question. Really, the way that we were collecting information previously is still sort of the way that we're doing it. That is to say, on an ad hoc basis. So every time you have a project, say, somewhere in Africa versus somewhere in Asia versus somewhere even domestically, all the work that we're doing that's falls under those non-IRP regions that I brought up, things like the international humanitarian law or the restoring family links, they're all still collecting their data. And really the disconnect that we had to bridge was, now that we have this new system, who's actually inputting it, right? Because now instead of typing it into a big Excel spreadsheet or into an Access database, you're putting it into this cloud-based platform. So it's a matter of sort of defining roles, and that's something that ECOS has been great for. It's been a way to increase transparency while sort of clearly delineating roles. So if somebody is, say, a regional finance analyst, they clearly understand that their role is going to be related to budget information. Or if somebody is the project lead, somebody is the data analyst, etc., each person now has a very clearly defined role, and they're the ones that are going to be going in. So in the case of this ITT, the indicator inputting, that's something that each team gets to sort of test out, see what works best for them. I know in my case I work very closely with the Haiti Assistance Program here at the ARC, so it's been really my job to some extent really entering this information, because this is the stuff that I deal with anyway. If it's a directly implemented project, it's things that I'm communicating with our teams on. If it's something that we're partnering with another organization on, it's something that the program officer is collaborating with the point person with that organization to get this information. But yeah, it's definitely been sort of a culture shift, because this database is meant to be our new database of record, and convincing people that the more you put in, the more information you can get out has been sort of a challenge. And it's something that this is still a young database. This is about 6 months into this project. So it's still a matter of sort of reinforcing this message that we really need everybody to be putting in good data and putting it in frequently. So that's sort of the challenge that we're dealing with.
Great, thanks. This is sort of a related question. This is more about the use of the data. So this is a question about who's using this database at the Red Cross, since there's so many staff all over the world, and do only certain staff have access to this? And if so, who, like whether it's decided on the basis of departments or positions or things like that?
Yeah, so something that I had sort of alluded to was those members, and for the most part, just about everybody that has access to ECOS And it's a good observation that we're a very big organization and work all over the world. So we have a lot of employees here in DC, but we also have folks all over the world that are working for us. And as far as getting them access, it really depends, right? So if you're a national staff member, say, on the ground in Vietnam, and you don't really need to interact with ECOS, we don't typically give them access, only because we pay Salesforce on a per-user basis. So every time we add somebody to the database as far as access goes, we have to spend more money to give them a year-long license to that. That said, once you're in the roles, it's meant to be a pretty open system. So everybody is able to see everybody else's records. So if I'm working on something that's specific to Haiti, I still have access to go look at the Asia regions projects or the Africa regions projects. There's, like I said earlier, it's really meant to be a transparent tool. So anytime somebody wants to see that data or run reports on that data, we wanted it to be as open as possible. As far as outside of the American Red Cross, we don't have currently, beyond the NGO aid map, we're looking into potentially building out a syncing functionality with Yadier. We don't have sort of standard protocols for the way that this data gets shared. For the most part, none of it is secretive or anything like that. It's just a matter of organizing that effort to make sure that what we're sharing is information that we want to be sharing.
Thanks. And just so for people who don't know, Yadier is the International Aid Transparency Initiative, and it's a standard for essentially sharing information on aid activity. So a standard that defines what information you should share and in what format. And NGO aid map and Yadier are pretty similar. Jonathan, are people on the American Red Cross domestic side using this at all, or is this solely within international services at this point?
It's still solely in international services. The challenge that we run into very frequently is that the Red Cross is just so big that there's so many different sort of directions that the international and the domestic side are always sort of moving in. There's been discussion about sort of helping. We're obviously an organization that sort of embraces this culture of learning, and we want to be able to take what we've learned with this database and pass it on to our, I guess you could say, our siblings in the domestic side. That sort of just begs the question, though, of what value this potentially would offer them based on what they do. So obviously some of what they do is similar, the disaster response side, but the domestic side also does a lot of blood work, things like that. So I think at this point, just because ECOS is still so young that we're still sort of ironing out the kinks, we're still building out certain features. Frankly, there's a lot of things that, even though this is live, there's a lot of future releases that we're working on that will add new functionalities. We haven't passed it along to the domestic side, but we're always meeting with them and always looking for ways that we can take the lessons learned from this project and help them if they ever decide to build out a similar database.
Great, thanks. Then we have a couple of questions related to the cost and resources, time needed to develop the ECOS platform. So yeah, how much resources did it take to do this, and how customized was this Salesforce-based system? Are you now reliant on Salesforce consultants to keep customizing and making adjustments for you to the database, or do you have some control over that yourself?
That's a great question. The specific cost I can't speak to, not because it's secretive. I'm not privy to that information. As far as the resources go, it's something that we internally work on, sort of developing what it is that we want the system to do, and then we have two vendor teams, one in India that actually helps build out things like what you're looking at right now. This page is something that's very customized. This isn't something that ships with Salesforce. This was something that we had to say, this is the way we work, and we need to mold this system to meet that. That said, something like this takes a lot of work, and every time we roll something out to our department, we realize that different units within ISD operate differently, and if nothing else, I think personally I've always been of the mind that ECOS needs to adapt to meet the way that we work, but at the same time ECOS has also sort of shown us some things that we could be doing more efficiently. One of the very time-intensive, as far as resources are concerned, activities that went into developing ECOS was actually mapping out all these very complex business processes that we have, because when you're working with millions of dollars on a development project somewhere, you have to be very careful that you're doing the proper due diligence, that you're designing the project correctly, etc. So when we had to take some time to sit down and really map all that out so that when, say, you're putting something into ECOS to go through this approval process, that it's matching the way that we work, that was a very time-intensive process. There are big, enormous flow charts that will give somebody a nosebleed just looking at, because it's just so massive that it's really difficult to grasp that this is something that's happening offline and that now this system has to be able to reflect online. So in that regard, I think that the time resources have been substantial. It's something that ECOS, I believe, has been sort of in the works in some way or another for several years. It wasn't until I got here that I think it was really ready to move into beta. We were beta testing it right around the time that I got here. And even currently, it's something that's it's a living system, so it's always going to be getting improved upon, and features are going to be added to it. And in that regard, we kind of always have at least a few people that are their job is 100% devoted just to this system, to getting feedback from folks, because we want it to be a project management system that helps, right? We don't want it to be an impediment. We want it to actually make people's work more efficient, as the name would imply. And for that reason, we have a few people whose job solely is to get feedback from folks and make these changes. But then again, like I said, there's two teams that are a little bit more in the weeds on actually making all of these changes on the back end, so all the coding and all of that. Designing pages like what you're looking at, all of that is a dedicated team. As far as us now being sort of at the mercy of Salesforce, I think Salesforce is a really great company that is very innovative, and I know our project manager was just in San Francisco for Salesforce's big conference, and it's really exciting that even though, yes, on one hand we are sort of now tied to Salesforce, on the other we're married to a system that will, for the next, at least foreseeable future, the next few years, will always be looking to improve itself and add new features. So I know for me, as an analyst, the reporting feature is incredible, and it makes my job a lot easier. And I know that it's really great seeing that Salesforce has all these new features that are coming out that are going to make, just for instance, this one part of Salesforce, the reports and dashboards element, even more powerful.
Great, thanks. Can you comment a little bit, you touched on it in your response a little bit, but can you comment a bit more on how you manage the rollout and training related to this system?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I think, at any given time about 4 or 5 of us that, I wouldn't say my job is solely in ECOS, but I am now sort of at the moment dedicated, I'm dedicating a chunk of my time every day to ECOS. So this core group of folks within the International Services Department are sort of taking charge of rolling out the system, getting this feedback, and then training other users. So we started this spring, I'd say something like in March or April, traveling around the world to different delegations that we have in Latin America and Africa and in Asia, and giving people hands-on training. So we sat down with them, we walked them through the system, and we tried to make it as relevant as possible to them. So it was typically trainings for program officers here in headquarters, but then in the field it was their counterparts, so the lead project leads that are going to be working on things within ECOS in the field, right? So in that regard, it was very hands-on, but then we also have additional resources that we've been giving folks. There's an online training tool called Moodle, which is an open source training platform that we have been using to not only give people that weren't able to attend those field trainings but also people that were able to but need sort of follow-up training. We use Moodle to do that. And then as far as communicating some of these changes, we recognize that ECOS was meant to sort of, at least to some extent, reduce the amount of email and physical paperwork as well that people have. And so one of the goals that we had was to get people to adopt Chatter, and Chatter is sort of the built-in, I hate saying the word social network because that sort of has a certain connotation to it, but it's similar to a social network in that it's something that allows us, to communicate with each other. And this is what you're looking at right now is a feed. It's sort of similar to anybody that maybe has Facebook. It's a way for us to post information for others to see and to share, and that's been a really valuable tool for communicating new features, for sort of talking about ECOS, and for getting people to collaborate. One of the really fantastic things about Chatter is that you can form virtual groups, and these groups can communicate on specific things that are private, right? So if there's only 5 people that need to see something, you can create a group, and that working group then can use Chatter instead of email or instead of their phones. So like I said, Chatter's been a really great way to sort of hook people into the system, and then once they start using Chatter, they recognize some of the benefits, and it's been very valuable for adoption.
Thank you. Then we have a couple of questions about whether all the data is manually entered into ECOS at this point, or whether you've built in integrations into other, or connections to other internal systems at the Red Cross, whether the financial system, fundraising system, etc.
Yeah, so we have a few integrations. The biggest one, which has sort of had to be delayed a little bit, is a lot of our projects use a quarterly reporting feature. So even now, or in the absence of ECOS, if we have work that's being done somewhere around the world every quarter, if it's us that's doing the work, we're the one actually writing those reports. If it's a partner that we're funding to do this activity, they write the report and submit it to us. And these quarterly progress reports, or QPRs, are done offline and then typically migrated into the system. The hope is that in the future, all of that will actually be done completely online, and we're transitioning right now to have that happen. So we're working on a system for getting all of these QPRs done completely online, saving people the hassle of, collaborating on different documents and all that. That's been delayed, but eventually we will have sort of the ability for even somebody that doesn't have access to ECOS to be able to input this information, and then they won't actually have access to our data. They'll just be able to input the data. But otherwise, yes, a lot of the data is being done manually for now. I think one of the other challenges that we're facing is that we work in places around the world that internet connectivity is not always the best. So we're working on a way to do offline data uploads, so where you'd be able to save all this information, and then whenever you get access to the internet, maybe you're just in town or something like that, you're able to poach their Wi-Fi for a couple minutes, and you're able to just really quickly upload all this information. That's what we're looking at down the road. For now, a lot of it is being done manually, and as I mentioned, the data migration process has been a challenge only because these log frames and what you're seeing right now, these 3 lines this is like the most simplistic example of a log frame, and in reality they're much, much longer. They look a bit more like this, right? They've got all kinds of levels, all kinds of hierarchies, and that all has to be done manually for now. So that, in some regard, has been one of the biggest bottlenecks to having this sort of hit the ground running, is that we've had to take the time to manually do that. So yeah, long answer short, we've had to do a lot manually, but in the future we're hoping to have data input integrate a little bit more seamlessly with some other sources.
Great. And we are running out of time, but we do have just 2 quick final questions, or potentially
Sure.
quick. One is, how do you ensure that the information that is input into the system is correct and complete? So who reviews and approves the records? And did you look at any other potential software other than Salesforce?
I can start with the second one, and just, it's a very quick answer. No, I don't know what else we looked at. I know that this was, choosing Salesforce was a process that was long, and they definitely wanted to make sure that they were making the right decision, because it's obviously a big investment of time and money to pick one and then run with it for the foreseeable future. But as far as other options that they were looking at, I know they were looking at other database-centric pieces of software, and ultimately why they chose Salesforce was that it's very scalable. It's cloud-based. It's something that can be accessed from anywhere, and it's customizable, right? You can use what's called Visual Force. That's the aspect of Salesforce that lets you build things like what you're looking at, so that you're able to shape it to meet your needs. And then to the first question about data accuracy, it's really sort of a group effort, I would say. I think that the people that are putting in the data are ultimately the ones that we consider responsible to make sure that that data is accurate. Now, in the absence of ECOS, pre-ECOS, people like myself were the ones that were probably spending the most time looking at quarterly reports and auditing the data. So if there was something that looked like it was off, I typically was the one that would go follow up. And then it's at the field level that they're actually collecting the data that we really have to make sure that we're following best practices for data collection, making sure, like I said, there's that, that drop down that I showed earlier on the indicator that asks if you want to sum or max the number. So that's really just one way that we're avoiding doing double counting, and we're very conservative with our counting. We always make sure that if there's even the slightest chance of double counting, that we take the most conservative number. And then as far as accuracy goes, it's really, like I said, it's a group effort, but it's something that people like myself, information analysts, anybody that's dealing with the data on a regular basis, I'd say we're the ones that are both in a position to catch it and also to fix it. So I would say that's really the best way to answer that, yeah.
Great. Well, we are at the end of our time, but Jonathan, thanks so much for being willing to share what the American Red Cross has done in this area, and thanks to everyone who joined the webinar and asked some questions. Just a quick note to say that the next presentation we have lined up is from Heifer International, and that will be sometime next month. If anyone listening into the webinar today would be interested in sharing their organization's experience, please let me know. You can reach me at lgrino@interaction.org, and hopefully we can continue to do some of these if people find it helpful. So thanks again for everyone for joining, and thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Bye.